Prime Minister's Island of Strangers speech sounded like something straight out of the Reform Trump playbook. Rather than alienating and devaluing migrants, recognising the need to increase the number of Brits who want to work in our health and care sectors, wouldn't the Minister prefer to support the Unison campaign for a certificate of common sponsorship to protect the working right of migrant workers who are working in unacceptable situations of exploitation, bordering on slavery and at threat of deportation? As a Labour member, would she not prefer to support that Unison campaign?
Home Secretary.
Well, one of the issues that we've highlighted in the White Paper is the importance of tackling exploitation, which is deeply damaging for those who have come to the UK in good faith and also damaging for other employers as well. So one of the points we want to explore is making it easier for people to not be held to a single employer where there are problems with the sponsorship arrangements, and to make that system more effective so that it can tackle exploitation.
Sally Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome today's White Paper, which actually brings some substantive reforms to our immigration system after over a decade of expensive rhetoric. But can the Home Secretary set out what further reforms that the Government is considering for our asylum and appeal system, as well to do with the ludicrous hotel situation that we were left with by the last Government?
Home Secretary.
Well, my honourable friend is right. We need to end asylum hotels, and that means we have to clear the shocking backlog that were left with by the previous government, who just stopped taking asylum decisions in the last few months in the run-up to the election. One of the measures we're also introducing, though, is new statutory timetables for appeals, because it's currently the appeal system that is holding up a lot of the issues in terms of the backlog. We need that through. That is part of the border security bill that we'll be able to vote on tonight, and that's why I hope all parties in this House will support it.
Mark Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can I welcome the Home Secretary's statement today? And it's in the national interest that the government get this right, and I hope that that will happen. I'm not convinced yet, to be honest, and we haven't seen much of the detail. But can I also support the honourable member for Clacton and his concerns around national security? I think that is something that should be taken more seriously. But this year, 10,500 people have crossed the English Channel, legal migrants. That is a record number for this period of time in any year previous. And I just saw nothing today in the Prime Minister's early leaked statement, or indeed the Home Secretary's statement, on a deterrent. Without a deterrent, you can have all the counter-terrorism commands, all the new laws, all the great statements. Nothing is going to change.
Secretary.
Well, this evening, Madam Deputy Speaker, we will be able to vote for a border security bill which includes counter-terrorism powers in order to tackle criminal smuggler gangs. And the Prime Minister said before Christmas, when we hosted the Interpol conference, border security is a national security issue and needs to be taken seriously as such. That is why we need those counter-terrorism powers. That's why we need our police, National Crime Agency, Border Force and border authorities to be able to intervene much earlier, to be able to take action against this dangerous trade in people that does undermine our national security as well as our border security. So I hope he'll vote for the bill tonight.
Chris Murray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The public have been waiting for 15 years to hear a government set out a serious strategy to actually get a grip on the legal migration system, so that it works for public confidence, so that it works for the economy, and so that it works for migrants themselves. So on that point, can I welcome the measures the Home Secretary has announced in relation to the health and social care visas? Because this has been really disruptive for the labour market, but it has also led to instances of extreme exploitation and modern slavery. And will she commit to these new measures being fully modern slavery proofed in the White Paper?
Home Secretary.
I welcome my honourable friend's points. There have been really just shameful examples of exploitation that probably all of us have come across in our constituencies around the social care visa and the way that it was introduced. But also here people who have come to work incredibly hard in our care homes, and that's why it's so important that we tackle that exploitation, and that's why we need to ensure that those standards are met, that we have a fair pay agreement, and certainly that we maintain standards around tackling trafficking and modern slavery too.
Ben Lake.
The Home Secretary will be aware of the funding crisis that afflicts so many of the UK's universities, and so much so that last year, when the Migration Advisory Committee reviewed the graduate visa route, it concluded that it should be retained, stating that under the current higher education funding model, closure or additional restrictions to the route could put many universities at financial risk. What is the Home Secretary's assessment of the impact of these changes today on the financial sustainability of our universities?
Secretary.
Well, I would say to the honourable member, where the universities are already meeting high standards of compliance, that is really welcome, and the majority of universities already do. Those that currently don't are going to need to increase their compliance standards to make sure that we have a proper and robust system. And in terms of the graduate visa as well, people will be able to stay on for the unrestricted 18 months. If they want to stay on for longer, they need to be contributing in graduate jobs, because too often people have stayed and not been part of graduate jobs even though they've got a graduate degree, so they should be getting graduate jobs, including as part of a skilled visa as well.
Steve Yem.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wonder if the Secretary of State would agree with me that the best way to address soaring migration for work is to properly train and upskill our domestic workers in constituencies like mine in Mansfield. And I wonder how the measures introduced today will contribute to that aim.
Home Secretary.
My honourable friend is exactly right, and in Mansfield and right across the country we need the training, we need the skills. The proposals for the immigration skills charge will mean that employers who are recruiting from abroad will need to contribute more towards training and skills in the UK. And where there are areas where there are persistent shortages, and there will be some of those which are still crucial to the economy, alongside being part of the temporary shortage list, those sectors will need to have proper workforce strategies in place for the first time to set out what action they are taking to improve and increase domestic recruitment and training so that it benefits UK residents who need to be part of our labour force.
Monica Harding.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A care provider in my constituency of Esher and Walton has already got in touch to say a third of his workers are from overseas and delivering about 60% of his work. So turning it around, he will be unable to care for 80 of 120 of his clients. He's been hit with horrendous national insurance contributions and invested thousands of pounds in the model. So in the absence of any adult social care plan, the government is now effectively capping the amount of workers. So how do we plug the gap very quickly, and will the care providers be properly supported with funding to allow these changes to happen?
So in the care provider in the honourable member's constituency, they will be able to extend those care visas. They will also be able to recruit from the number of displaced care workers, which was 39,000 care workers were displaced when the proper new checks and standards were brought in, and they'll be able to recruit from the local community as well, including with alongside a proper fair pay agreement in place. So we need to make sure that there is a proper strategy to value social care and to deal with some of the causes of recruitment historically, rather than always having the kind of impact with the social care visa recruiting from abroad at such a scale that it led to significant exploitation.
Olivia Blake.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does the Secretary of State agree that, far from being strangers, migrants are our neighbours, our friends and family and integral parts and members of our communities, and that moves to cast them as strangers are both divisive and hostile and risk legitimising the same far-right violence that we saw in last year's summer riots? Have we learnt nothing?
Home Secretary.
Well, as I set out in my statement, Madam Deputy Speaker, the people who have come here from abroad through very many generations, contributing to our economy and to our country, being part of our community and making our country what it is. That is who we are as a country because of that history, and it will continue to be important for our future. We do want people to be able to integrate, to be able to share with neighbours, and that is why some of the provisions around ensuring that we support integration and support English language are so important as well.